Roger Corman, he's a guy, right? He's a look. We can't be film fans and not at least get a healthy dose of Roger Corman in our blood, because it's kind of a requisite hurdle that any cinephile has to come across. And you don't have to like Roger Corman, but you have to accept that he's kind of an important part of cinema history. Much like me, I hate George Lucas, but I accept that he's a very important part of cinema history. As much as I want to see him punched repeatedly
Homie's neck
in the nutsack.
In his neck sack?
Oh, I was referring to his neck sack, which coincidentally holds his nuts.
Oh.
Anyway, yeah, you didn't know that?
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
That Men in Black alien was totally based on him.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, facts.
I like that reference.
Yeah. Wasn't that in part 2?
I don't even know, dude.
I hope so, because that's the worst one. But anyway, Man in Black sequels are ass, aren't they?
Oh,
anyway,
I haven't seen the last 2.
No, I know that the last one's ass.
Yeah.
Part 3, I don't know. Hopefully not, but... Anyway, we're getting off fucking topic. Although kind of on topic because aliens. But anyway, Roger Corman, he's produced for the large portion of his life a bunch of schlock. B-rate knockoffs and cash-ins of better stuff. And, some original stuff and some adaptation stuff. But mostly through and through, it's been iffy, and don't get me wrong, there's always room for that. We like a fair amount of B movie stuff here too, so you gotta give it a shot, because you don't know where some gold lies. And that's the thing about Corman. No matter how much he tried to rip something off or cash in on a craze, he always did it in a way that introduced enough new and different elements that made it at least feel or look like something different. For the most part, which is more than you can say for like the Italians at the time, which just straight up ripped off shit and then called it something else. So that's cool. I mean, where you stand on Corman is very subjective. Where we stand on him, I think we're open to whatever may be good. So with that in mind, I decided to show you Galaxy of Terror. That classic. Galaxy of Terror is a 1981 flick produced by Corman. It's most notable for having been one of the early films, I believe the second film, at least under Corman, that James Cameron worked on. Now, he didn't direct it, don't get me wrong, he didn't write it either, but he was a production designer, and is as prone to be with Cameron, he bulldozed his way to some other positions. By the end of the production, he had done a lot more than just design sets. Let's just say that.
Everybody hated him, most likely.
Most likely. And I hadn't seen this movie in a long time, but I had seen it before. And my previous impression of it was like what everybody's impression of it is. This is a fun, schlocky, and very flawed B-movie that clearly is ripping off on Alien. So the concept is as simple as this. There's some stranded possible survivors on a planet on the ass end of the universe, and galaxy or whatever, and some working Joe types are deployed to go rescue these people. So it kind of takes there from Alien a bit. When they get there, they encounter what the other people that crash landed there encountered and ultimately did away with them. And they are one by one picked off, etc. Very similar in concept, but just on that surface level, because really what we ultimately end up getting is not some sort of, biological creature that's, just some sort of a result of nature. And no, in fact, what we're getting here is something a lot more abstract in concept, And when I finished watching it the second go round and ultimately the third go round when I watched it with you, was that as much as this movie was influenced by movies like Alien and, if you're into this older school shit, Forbidden Planet, it was also a movie that progressively influenced movies in its wake. Most notably, James Cameron, who worked on this, clearly just reworked this fucking idea into Aliens, because there are so many parallels in terms of the basic structure of this movie and visually too, that it's kind of crazy. But movies like Event Horizon, which focus more on a psychological aspect of horror and fear, etc. They also kind of take influence from it, intentionally or not, So that's pretty cool. So there's something to like here. It's definitely a movie that has a lot of fans in the B community. But I'm wondering, what did you think? This being your first time that you saw it.
I liked it. I do think that there's a lot of corn in there. Like you're eating that baby and you get a mouthful of King Vitamin. But there's also a lot of good.
Say, man, don't knock King Vitamin. That's my
King
cereal.
Vitamin's a freaking... If y'all heard of King Vitamin...
That's that motherfucking Wick cereal.
Hell yeah, dude.
I'm on that, boy. Chomp, chomp, chomp.
So yeah, like sometimes it's very like there's a lot... People's names are so corny in this.
Yeah, we got some ridiculous names.
It starts off with something that you're like that glowing head master guy, which of course comes into play. But like at first you're like, what is this? And there's just like some air of corniness, like sci-fi corniness. Mm-hmm. But I do think that there's a lot in there, and it's a weird mix of this old school sci-fi corniness and straight up gore and like tits and shit.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like this weird middle ground between two genres and times.
It really feels ultimately like an Italian production.
Kinda, yeah.
There's a large focus on the visceral and grotesque, the strange. And they push it to some extremes that it almost seems ridiculous or is outright ridiculous. So yeah, you're right about all of that. And it's weird because I just finished saying that Corman kind of distinguished himself from the Italians. But I think this is like the most Italian style fucking movie he kind of put out there. But yeah, you're right. This leans heavily both into horror and sci-fi. So you can't really... I even asked you as I was trying to sort it, I was like, where do I put this? Sci-fi or horror? It's not a movie without flaws. In fact, it's riddled with them, and that's kind of part of its charm. It's the charm of most Roger Corman production movies. You understand inherently that there's going to be tons of fucking cheesy shit and corners cut up the ass, and believe me, that is definitely the case here. So yeah, it does start... Now, we explained the plot earlier, but that's just the basic structure. It was meant to show the similarities between it and Alien, but really we're excluding all this weird like sci-fi heavy shit. Yeah. Like there's this character called the Master, which has a glowing head, which presumably rules the whole universe,
I think.
And he likes to play games, so there's that. And he's the one that sends these people on a mission, to a rescue mission, and it begins with him. Well, after a slight intro, it begins with him kind of like commiserating with what is ultimately revealed to be an oracle.
Yeah.
Which is just an old hag, by the way.
Yeah, really old hag.
A good hag.
Old albino hag.
Old albino hag. She's got the missing teeth. So on the hag, it gets a 10. But, yeah, he's commiserating with his hag, playing with her. This sort of weird computer game that makes no sense.
Yeah, what was it?
And they're talking in a way that makes absolutely no sense to anybody that's seen this the first time through. Like, it's not clever writing. It's just bad writing.
Yeah.
It makes no sense. If you've seen this more than once, then it makes sense. But if you see it one time, you're like, what are they fucking talking about? It makes sense at the ass end, but by then it's too late.
Yeah.
A well-written movie would have made everything at least linger so that it makes sense as it grows.
Really, you're like, okay, that was a scene.
Yeah, really. Yeah, really, yeah. That's really it right there. You're like, that was... the thing that happened, right?
Thing.
I'm sure I'm supposed to get something out of that, but so yeah.
Glowy head guy.
Now I had seen this before, but it'd been a long ass time. So when I rewatched it the first time, I was like, "Huh? What the fuck? I know there's something here, but I don't know." So yeah, I mean, it's just inept writing.
Yeah.
But it does. And here's the thing about this movie: it does lay down enough almost every time for where you're interested. You're like, all right, I want to see where that goes. And that's kind of like the modus operandi of this fucking movie. Whenever you're about to be like, that's too much for me, that sucks, it lays down something else that you might be interested in. And I find that for most people, it's different things. For me, it was certain characters I found amusing.
Balon?
Definitely not. Oh, actually, Balon I found amusing. Yeah, we'll get into characters. Certain concepts, the little eggs that they would lay down for you to kind of... I'm sure to them it seemed clever, but really it's like, what is this?
Yeah.
I just wanted to know more. So it does keep you interested in that respect. Visually speaking, there's a lot on the screen. Whether it be matte paintings, whether it be sets, you could see that they scrapped a lot with very little. Yeah. And, a lot of credit goes to James Cameron, which apparently was the innovator on this movie, because they made sets out of, like, everything, dude. Like, whatever came up.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Like, this isn't a post-Alien world, clearly. Mm-hmm. Not only because it's clearly ripping off Alien, but just visually. Mm-hmm. But Alien, I think, did that retro future, like, so believably. Yeah. And this one, it's like, it's almost there. Like I think the landscape stuff and like the planet stuff looks interesting. Like it just looks like junk everywhere, but it looks interesting enough. Like the tech stuff it looks like you could just play Pong on shit. Yeah. Like everything has knobs and shit, and it's a little corny. Like I said, it's that weird middle ground of a little too corny, but then there's other parts where it's kind of impressive, like with the big matte painting stuff, which is obviously a matte painting, but it looks kind of cool. Like even some of the ship corridors, they look kind of cool, like kind of retro, like again, that retro-y future. Mm-hmm. It's just there's some stuff where it's like mainly the consoles and shit where it's like, damn, homie, bring them knobs in.
And it's kind of a weird thin line. Like you pointed out that Alien does the retro tech look. Alien holds up fucking phenomenally. Like it's a masterpiece. Alien. I don't think anybody will argue that Alien's a masterpiece.
Yeah, I think the thing about Alien is that you could see that in this future, the space travel is just like a normal thing. So
it's a job.
They wouldn't have these like super advanced things. It would just be things that work.
Yes.
Whereas here it's kind of like, all right, they're trying to make it look futuristic. Yeah, it's just kind of failing.
Yeah, and that's that very thin line, and Galaxy of Terror kind of errs to the flawed side of that, but it doesn't lose you with that, thankfully. And like you say, some of the stuff is actually impressive. Now, if you watch an unremastered version of this movie, some of the stuff is going to look really bad. Like the green screen is fucking terrible, but if you watch the 4K scan that's been remastered, they actually did a really good job with matching the plates and all that stuff. So most of that actually comes off pretty fucking well, surprisingly well at times. So that's cool. Thankfully, I believe there's only two different scans available on Blu-ray, I think. So chances are you'll get that one. But yeah, man. So now we have these characters that, like in Alien, there's an assortment of them. They're working Joe types, but here we go more into the kind of like incredulous sci-fi field. We have a psychic. We have a trigger-happy guy with some sort of history with this other cat who's in love with a psychic chick. There's Sid Haig, the legendary Sid Haig, exploitation king, and later, of course, Captain Spaulding. Who's this silent, mute almost guy that has like these crystal glaive things that he seems incredibly dedicated to. Oh man! And I feel like there's a backstory there we never got.
You know what? That's another thing that I gotta say before we continue. Mm-hmm. That is kind of interesting about the movie. It kind of feels like there's backstory to everything. Even shit that
and we don't get it.
Yeah, which I could see being like a negative to someone. I think it kind of works in this. Like you're like, all right, I guess I could go along with it.
You know what it is, man? There's some sci-fi, a lot of sci-fi, speculative sci-fi, etc., where they lay out their world building through suggestion and dialogue. I think this is what this was trying to do, except it does it ineptly. Yeah. So you just wonder if stuff is missing.
If it's supposed to be there,
Yeah, but in more capable hands, this would be this type of stuff that your mind fills in the gaps. Because a writer that knows how to write well will write it so that your mind does fill in the gaps the way it's supposed to. Here, you're just kind of like, am I supposed to... And it still kind of works in a way because you are thinking about how to fill in the gaps. It's just sometimes the gaps aren't filled well. Yeah. And definitely not with those crystal glaive things. You're like, what was that? Why is he so dedicated to that?
They break and he's just like destroyed over it.
Yeah, and it's weird because there may have been a backstory, like we said, and it's almost guaranteed because a lot of these characters talk in a way that lays out that world building way. Like the pilot that takes him there, Trantor, her name is, which clearly Cameron just kind of reworked into the PTSD like Ripley, only less crazy. Trantor is always talking about this experience she had escaping, being the last survivor of this tragedy against this alien race.
Yeah.
And that's kind of cool because it gives her character, which has very small screen time, a lot of substance. And you kind of know where she's coming from. And you know when she dies, you know why she went out there to die the way she did. Or rather, she didn't intend to die, but you know, you get it. With Sid Haig's character, I knew there had to be lines like that because at one point in the production, he had lines. It's just he made the decision himself, and the directors and producers decided to go ahead with it, that his character was not going to talk, except for one line, and that is, "I live and die by the crystals," in reference to his glaives.
Yeah.
And you're like, whoa, what does that mean? And you know what? Credit to him because he's very interesting because of that.
There's a point where like the dude Balon gives him a gun,
and he's like, "Fuck this gun."
He throws the gun down, but then there's like this creeping doom that's coming. He grabs it and he's like, "Ah!" and he throws it back down.
He's like disgusted at the idea that he dared to grab the gun out of fear.
I'm like, what is this character?
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It's crazy. And you know, like I said, credit to him because he's memorable that way, you know. Maybe he knew that this was not exactly the greatest thing he was working on.
Or possibly he just didn't want to remember lines, honestly.
That too. And you know what? It's Sid Haig, so fuck it. Yeah. So he's cool, man. And you know, we have... this movie has several infamous scenes, but I think the most infamous scene of them all is definitely the worm rape sequence. Now, you're wondering, how did we get to an alien movie to worm rape?
Yeah.
And, well, it's simple as this. Though this is a alien knockoff, it takes a distinctive approach to things. We're not talking about a creature here, and we're kind of entering spoiler territory here. Ultimately, the menace they're facing is themselves. They have entered a place that tests them based on their fears, basically. Yeah. So what they see and what they combat is their individual fears. Sometimes this makes sense for the characters.
Yeah, I feel like this is not super well communicated in the movie.
Yeah, or on the opposite end, it's overly communicated. Like
towards the end, yeah.
Like there's a character that has basically a form of claustrophobia.
Yeah.
Really tightness, tight spaces. Yeah. Not necessarily just claustrophobia, but tightness. And she just says that. Yeah. It's too tight. It's too small in there or whatever, right? And there's a person that's afraid of worms, apparently. And because she sees some worms, she's like, worms, convenient worms, by the way. Why did those worms appear? Yeah. She's like, oh, I hate worms, which leads to the infamous worm rape sequence, where a woman literally is raped by a worm in this movie. And that's a thing that's on film forever.
A massive larva Mothra looking ass worm.
Yeah, dude.
With fingers. Because it came from Sid Haig's in my hand.
Yeah, no shit. And look, let me tell you.
This makes no sense.
Let me tell you, though, that worm was groping.
Dude, that worm. Look,
I've never seen somebody take off clothes faster than that worm.
Look, like, clearly we're not all about the rape. But this wormy made an interesting worm rape scene. Like, he freaking was humping, dude. Like, there's a scene where there's a part where, yes, he rips off the clothes with stupendous ease.
Yeah.
Slimes up on the chick. And then there's a shot from above, and the worm's just going, holding her.
He's literally
just like thrusting. I was like, that's not how worms work.
It's a bizarre fucking scene.
Yes.
And it's one of several bizarre scenes, but it stands out. It's one of the reasons this movie's kind of infamous. It's not overtly graphic, especially nowadays.
Yeah.
But you can imagine how this went over. And it was in the trailer, like glimpses of it. So people were back then probably like, what the fuck? I gotta see this movie. So, you know, typical of exploitation fare, they exploited their worm rape sequence. The interesting part about the worm rape was that...
#worm rape.
Yeah, that Roger Corman had promised the producers that had invested, or I should say the investors that had put money into this movie, he had promised them a nude sequence, a sex scene with nudity in it, obviously. And at the point in filming, they had yet to fulfill that promise, shall we say. So his solution was like, well, why don't we mix one of the deaths
with a worm,
with the nudity?
Yeah, it would just happen to be a worm.
Yeah, it just happened to be this massive worm that rapes. So that's a thing.
That's a scene, dude.
Yeah.
I gotta say though, that chick had mad titties.
Yeah, look, and by all accounts, the chick was all for it. Apparently, she was like, "Yo, I'm in for this.
Yeah.
Let's do this worm rape right now." And she almost got killed by the fucking worm because it was just on like this fucking crane.
Damn, homie.
But apparently, she was all for the worm rape sequence.
Imagine you get killed on set during a worm.
That's worse than Vic Morrow's death.
Well, I don't know about that, homie. I would take a worm.
You're telling me that dying via chopper, playing a guy that's redeemed himself and is trying to save those he once hated, is worse than dying crushed under a worm that's currently humping you? I would rather die chopper style.
I think for most people, yes, it would be worse. I think for me, I would gladly take the worm rape over over freaking filming in some shithole country that, you know, I didn't have permission to be in.
Well, that's true, but still.
Right? With John Landis.
And John's never going to live that down.
No, dude.
Anyway,
also, I have no idea what country I just called a shithole country.
It might have just been America.
Yeah, honestly, yes.
Which by now, yeah. But anyway, so yeah, this is just one of the many weird and strange sequences in the movie. There's a lot of cheap to good to middling to, you know, it's very uneven in the quality is what I'm getting to. Effects in this movie. Some of them communicate what they're trying to communicate quite well despite their shortcomings. Some of them don't. Some of them do halfway. What was your favorite versus your least favorite?
I kind of dug the weird Ripley chick's zombie form.
Trantor, dude.
Trantor's burned up face look.
Now, are we talking at the end sequence or when she actually
at the end
gets killed? Okay.
You know, when they're attacking the guy.
Mm-hmm.
Look kind of cool. Look like EC-ish.
Yeah.
Also, there's this particular scene where someone gets their face crushed.
Yes.
Which, though I was impressed by the effect and was like, hey, that was pretty good. I think a millisecond shorter on the setup, and it would have been truly impressive because it gives you just enough time to make you go, oh man, head looks like shit, and then it explodes. But the explosion looks cool, like the crushing looks cool. It's just it gives you that just enough time to go, oh man, the head though.
Yeah.
But that was a cool effect.
Yeah, man, I agree. My
also
favorite
worm rape.
Well, look, the worm rape goes unspoken. Obviously, you're gonna like the worm rape. My favorite was probably the Trantor sequence. You know, again, this character, not the one that you said specifically, but this character intrigues me. I wanted her. I mentioned to you that I wanted her to be more in the movie. Yeah. Like she should have gone into the planet with him.
She was pretty cool, and I'm not even gonna lie.
Would bang?
Would totally bang, dude. Trantor was freaking smoked. She got that mad booty.
Mad booty.
When she was walking away from Robert Englund.
Yeah.
I was like, damn.
She got that dunk.
Plus, she was playing like that fake old lady. Mm-hmm. You know, but it was hot. Like, you're like, clearly this is not an old lady.
Yeah.
But I would totally bang that because she got the white hair, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Trantor.
Something about Trantor, definitely. And she's just an interesting character. The idea that she was like the survivor of this cataclysm. Yeah. And she's like all fucked up about it. It's funny because like they'll throw out the name of where she escaped from, and all of a sudden she'll be like, you know, like dazed back into that time and space in her head. And I just found that to be one of the more effective ways that they actually communicated the idea of fear being what's taking them down. Because this is not a movie that communicates that well.
Not from the beginning. Not at first.
At first, and because some of the ones are like, so wait, he was afraid of that? I don't get that.
Afraid of weird tentacles that come out of holes?
Yeah, some of the fear deaths aren't communicated well at all, or they just obviously just made shit up. Yeah. Some of them are good, and I think Trantor's is possibly the best in the sense that that concept of that idea of her being constantly paranoid of these beings that she once fought and got away from is always on her mind. It's always taking her out of sorts. So when we do see her in some form or another, she's always kind of going back to that. And the last we see of her is her, shooting at illusions basically on a screen, thinking that they're coming to get her, swearing that they're outside, and
almost
she just
being broken out of the illusion, and then be like, no.
Yeah. And then she ambles out to confront them, and then she's killed in the gruesome way. I thought that was really cool, and I thought I communicated that the best. And just again, the character is super cool. And if I had to pick a worse one, oh man,
I got.
Okay, shoot.
I think the first one, the roach death, was pretty lame.
Mm-hmm.
But also, not necessarily because it was super lame, but because this character needed to die better. Balon's death.
I agree, man. Balon deserved better because he sucks.
I like the creature that comes out. It kind of looks like a weird Independence Day alien.
With boots.
With boots. Oh, dude. Yeah, that scene.
He had some mad Uggs.
Yeah, that scene. That little bit where they show him lifting and he's just wearing straight boots, dude. You're like, dude, you killed the illusion. It's like that scene where they show the head for too long,
Yeah.
Snip that shit, homie. Anyway, Balon was like this character that I both hated and kind of liked.
Yeah, man.
And he deserved to get like torn in twain or something because this homie was like a shithead.
Now, you did predict how he was going to die.
Yeah, I did.
You said this sucker needs to fucking fall off his bridge. And that's exactly what happens. Yeah, Balon is weird. He's like the guy that's kind of leading the ground troops, quote unquote, when they go exploring on the planet. And he's like a trigger happy, short fuse mofo.
Yeah.
And
worst leader ever.
Worst leader. He's tearing everyone down. He hates everyone clearly, and everyone hates him. And dude, this guy is shooting like nonstop.
Yes.
Like you can breathe and he's shooting.
Yeah.
And he's just one of those guys you want to see die. And though still kind of gets a cool death, it's not up to the level that he had built himself up to.
Dude.
So I agree. Because of that. But, that's the way it is. So, yeah, the ultimate reveal of this, we'll leave it to you. Because really, even though we said all that, it doesn't ruin what the ultimate reveal of this is. Which is kind of both stupid and cool. You could see a lot of these concepts in this movie in better hands being really cool.
Yeah, it does come off pretty dumb. But it kind of works. It's kind of like a weird episode of Star Trek almost.
Yeah.
Like...
If it were bloody as fuck and stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, man.
Needed more jumping off walls.
Definitely. Some Gorn.
Yeah.
So
just a Gorn in there.
Yeah. He's confused. Yeah. What's going on, guys? No, Anyway, the music in this, it's actually pretty cool. I actually kind of like the themes in this. It's not too, intrusive. It's not all over the place. Yeah, I liked it, man. It's not great, but I dug it. It fit with the vibe, shall we say? Photography looks pretty cool, especially in the remastered version. I have no idea because I have no clear memory of how it looked when I saw it in VHS. But I'm sure it wasn't as good as the remastered version.
Say feces. There's a part in the beginning where they show like the alien landscape, and there's straight up just a xenomorph laying on the floor. I was like, serious, homie, throwing shots?
So let's talk about that. Look. It's very clear that Cameron, we know how anal James Cameron can be. He will go back to something and do it his way until he gets it right. And the fact that they gave him a lot more power in this movie than they usually did tells me that this guy had a bug up his ass about fixing something that he couldn't fix the first time around. Because ultimately, though, again, this is an Alien knockoff, it retrospectively looks more like Aliens. These people are, we have Trantor being the more Ripley character. She's experienced something before. She's traumatized by it, but she has the knowledge to get them there, and that's exclusive to her. We have this character called Core, which is clearly not human, and everybody mistrusts, just like they did Ash and or Bishop in Aliens. He even looks like Bishop, old white man.
Obsession with making him look like Bishop.
Thin, older, gray-haired type guy, Lance Henriksen definitely fits kind of in that category. He's mistrusted and all that stuff. And then we have, these people going out, and the hub of all activity and whatever killed the people that landed there originally is a pyramidal structure from which they get strange readings and they go deeper into only to be killed. So there's a lot of similarities, more going forward than backward. So I'm pretty sure James Cameron always had this fucking thing up his ass like, yo, I'm going to get this right. And Backslash, he always has been very, very keen on attributing him ever getting a career to Roger Corman. He's never shied away from his past. He's never hidden the fact that he began with Corman, and his first movie was with Corman, even though he had a bad experience with that, which was Piranha 2: The Spawning, which I do not recommend. It's a horrible movie. He had a horrible experience doing that, but a gig was a gig, and it led to the Terminator, so fuck it, right? So yeah, man, it's an interesting piece of cinema history for various reasons. As exploitation B-grade horror schlock, and for what it says about the people involved in it, and how it informed other movies and was informed by movies previous to it. Interesting in that respect. Plus, it's got Sid Haig in an early role. A lot of people got to know Sid Haig because of Captain Spaulding. Let's be honest here. A lot of people got to know him. Some were lucky enough to see him in his blaxploitation roles and exploitation roles and schlocks, trash roles like this. That's kind of how he made his name. That's why, that's why he had those fucking cameos in Tarantino movies before he became famous, or modern famous, if you will. So that's cool. Robert Englund, you get to see him here before he was Freddy.
Dude, he wins.
Robert Englund, yeah, look. If you see the movie, if you see the movie, there's a guy that ultimately wins, quote unquote. But really, Robert Englund wins.
Yes.
That's all we're going to say. Once you see it, let us know what you think. He got shafted is what we're saying.
Yeah, he did.
Also, he defeats his fear just the same way Freddy is defeated in Nightmare on Elm Street. Just pointing that out. But anyway.
Also, he looks like Rhett.
Definitely looks like Rhett from Ren and Link without the beard.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So yeah, you get to see interesting faces, interesting places, and interesting things going on screen at the very least. So let's talk about this. Any final thoughts? Any overt negatives you want to put out there? Like I said, this is not a perfect film at all. It's fucking flawed as shit.
I think the biggest negative is the fact that it's just kind of a little too corny at times.
Mm-hmm.
There's a huge corn factor that comes along with this. If you're eating corn nuts and, like I said, King Vitamin while it's watching, then you're going to be at home.
Yeah, that's punishment right there.
Yeah, dude.
Corn nuts and King Vitamin?
But your feast is going to be straight, full, freaking corn on a cob, dude, once you finish. That being said, I don't know, obviously it's not going to be for everyone. It's super cheap at times. Mm. That being said, I do think that it uses its cheapness well, weirdly. It's definitely not Creature, which is another Alien ripoff, which sucks. So yeah, I mean, I would give it a shot if you're, wanting to. That's literally the stipulation for you giving this a shot if you want to. I'm not going to tell people to go watch it.
If you're someone interested in important films in cinema history of all walks, then sadly, this is kind of something you have to see. I'm not guaranteeing you're going to like it because it's, like you say, for a very specific audience to like. But it's definitely a film you have to see if you're interested in cinema because, one, it's a Corman film. Two, it's a film with the specific names in it that bear significant weight in the industry now. And two, what it took, what it used, and how it influenced things further. Actually pretty interesting in that regard. So, yes, in that regard. If you're a B movie loving fuck, if you like weird schlock and gore and crazy, you're not concerned with it being super quality, then yeah, definitely watch this. It's not a funny movie in that respect.
Not really.
You're not going to be laughing at it, at its badness. But it is strangely enjoyable. So, anyway, that being said, let's give a final score to this. Relative to things of its type, look, I'll go first. I gotta be fair. You know what I'm saying? I gotta be fair. I do enjoy this movie quite a bit, but it is severely flawed, and there's a lot of shortcomings. It's more of a piece of interesting history to me than a movie. but there is a lot of fun. I think I had fun watching. I've watched it 3 times in the last 2 days, and one of them with you, and I had fun each time. And I think the most fun I had with it was watching it with you. So I think that says a lot about a movie. You know, it's definitely a crowd movie more than the solo movie. Yeah. So that's cool, man. I like that. I like that about it. That being said, its flaws sometimes cannot be overlooked. And if I'm going to be fair, I have to put it at a 5, even. You know, but that's a very enthusiastic 5. That's a 5 with all that stuff that I just said. Like, it's kind of like a relevant movie if you're going to be a cinephile. So I'll say that. But I do really, really enjoy this picture. But anyway, go ahead.
I think you're right in what you say. Realistically, it's like a 5, maybe even lower for being real. But there is a weird charm to it. And maybe it's just because I recently watched Creature and the Dunwich Horror.
You're like, please, not that.
Yeah, there's just, especially with Creature, which is just a shitty version of Galaxy of Terror and Alien.
Although, to be fair, you did see
I saw
a cut version
I saw
of
it
Creature.
on Comet, so it was probably
super cut, maybe.
I don't know, dude. There's a lot in that you're just like, Fushila.
Well, we'll give that one a
anyway,
shot.
Yeah, we'll give it a shot. But yeah, compared to the Comet cut of Creature, this is like pretty up there, dude. Like almost instantly, you're like, wow, this is impressive compared to Creature.
Oh yeah. I'll agree with that no matter what.
So yeah, like when compared to its kin, I guess I'll give it an impressive like 7 when compared to Alien ripoffs. As a movie, I think it's fair to give it like a 5, maybe even a 4. But this is my final score, considering enjoyment factor.
All right.
I'll give it a 7.
Okay.
It's definitely not a great movie, but it is fun factor, included.
Yeah. And I agree. I agree with all that. I was just putting it, again, and that's good because I put it more into the perspective of trying to see it with its kin, including Alien.
Yeah.
Which really, like in Alien's like Alien's like 10. It's a perfect sci-fi film. Just like the Xenomorphs, a perfect killing machine.
Yeah, dude.
But if I'm gonna fairly put it next to Alien, this movie gets like a fucking 1.
0, yeah.
But also I gotta put in how much I enjoyed it, so that's why it's in the 5.
Yeah.
So there you go. There you have it. There's 2 thoughts. Let us know what you think about this movie. If you've seen it already, for sure, let us know. And if not, go check it out and talk to it about us later. In the meantime, hit like, share, subscribe, and those notification buttons, because we're out.